Today I want to talk about a topic that in my humble opinion is not talked about frequently enough when it comes to consulting or corporate careers in general, and this is what it takes to become successful in these environments as an introvert. So welcome to another coffee break here on my channel from Learning. My name is Heinrich and on my channel I want to help you to become successful in the first years of your career. I'm a former McKinsey consultant, so this is where this video will be also very much inspired from, but also from other roads and experiences besides that. And I want to structure this video in three main parts. First, I will talk about what it actually means to be an introvert and whether I am one or not. Second, I want to talk about some typical experiences that you will face in consulting based on situations that also really happened in my career. And third, I want to give you some tips, some actionable advice on what you can do to actually survive in these environments as an introvert. So first, let's start. What does it actually mean to be an introvert? And first, I think there's a very big misunderstanding, and this is that people think about something like social anxiety when they think about introverts. So introverts are people who aren't really able to talk in public, to deliver speeches, feel super uncomfortable with other people, right? Is this really what's the case? Well, and I hope it's not too surprising to you that this is actually not what at least the psychology would say what introversion is. And the official definition that you will find in the textbook is that for introverts, social situations are draining their batteries. So it takes energy to be exposed to other people, to interact with other people, whereas extroverts, for them it's the opposite, right? So they can recharge their batteries when they interact with other people. And based on all of this, I realized that yes, I am an introvert. And while I have no problem at all with giving public speeches, I actually enjoy it to some extent. I also have no problem at all with filming YouTube videos like these. I know that whenever I spend a full day together with other people, interacting with them a lot, I will just feel exhausted at the end of the day. For me, social interactions like this surely drain my batteries and don't recharge my batteries. So that being said, let's move to the second part of this video, where I think that especially in consulting, you will face quite some difficult situations as an introvert. And just to give you some examples, and I just want to tell you some anecdotes from my life, from my past experiences. I remember one project, I was actually the project lead for that project. So I had my team of a handful of other consultants who worked together with me. We were all based in the same hotel. So every single morning I was waking up, going to the hotel lobby to pick up my breakfast. And that was actually a project which was quite tough. So the working hours were quite long. I felt quite sleep deprived most of the days, most of the weeks. And especially in the morning, I still felt quite crushed from what happened all the days afterwards. The only thing that actually I wanted to do was to be for myself, pick up a breakfast, eat that, and just try to put myself together and prepare myself mentally for the day. But then, of course, when I came down, very often I saw already some of my other colleagues, of course, from the team sitting there and getting some breakfast. And I knew, hey, I'm the project lead. I cannot just now sit somewhere else, right, and let these people eat alone. But I need to join them, sit next to them. And even though this might feel like a very small example, for me, this was one of these examples where you're just so also under pressure to spend time together with your team colleagues, with your teammates, socialize with them even at 7 a.m. in the morning. But it's actually nothing like you would do more than just be for yourself, relax, and just enjoy your food. First example. Second example, team room situation. So this to some extent may be changed now due to the current post-corona situation, but still as a consultant, especially in the MBB consulting firms, you will spend lots of the time at the client side, sitting in team rooms. And very often, not always, but very often, the client gives you a rather small room. So it's not like you have very huge meeting rooms at your disposal all the time. To the contrary, it would not be unusual that you sit together with 3, 4, 5 other people in a small room and you barely have more space than something like this, right? Where you put your laptop, you are there, then often also clients come in, maybe your partners come in who also want a spot at the desk. It's an atmosphere where almost always someone will be constantly on the phone doing conference calls, video calls in parallel while you are there trying to work. It will be very noisy. I think this environment alone for a full-blown introvert is just pure stress. It is very difficult just to go somewhere else, just have time for yourself. Often then in these client environments, you're looking for some rooms, some empty rooms where you maybe have a little bit of space to potentially do a very important confidential call, but not always there will be one, and surely you cannot just go there for hours just to work, right? So second situation why this might be very stressful for an introvert. Third situation, social interactions beyond just the work during the day. And there are many examples for that. A rather typical one would be that once or twice a week, usually someone senior from your leadership, someone like a partner, is flying in and spends the day or half of the day with you. And it would not at all be unlikely that then in the evening you would together go out for a team dinner to spend the time together. And surely to some extent this is very enjoyable. Often you go to nice restaurants, you have very nice food, and probably more often than not this can also be a lot of fun. Of course, again, potentially also depending on what your personality is. But here the truth is also that, again, very often the days before, the weeks before, you had very little sleep, you feel quite exhausted, you feel quite sleep deprived, and probably there are other things that you would like to do more than now spend the evening or several hours at least together with potentially your senior leadership, your colleagues, especially if you know that once you get back, once it's 10 p.m., 11 p.m. or even later and you get back, there's still work to do, right? And I can tell you this would not at all be an unlikely situation. And now try to put yourself in the situation. There's the partner who of course is often a very social person, wants to interact with you, talk to you. Often there are then different one project lead, different associates sitting at the desk, sitting at the table. And especially when I was a junior associate, I often felt more or less pressed that I now need to interact, that I now need to say something, talk to the partner, somehow entertain the person. And maybe to some extent that wasn't really needed. But then on the other hand, of course, there's also this topic of visibility, right? And how important that is to get promoted, to get to the next level. I will link somewhere above here a video where I discussed this concept in detail. But again, in a nutshell, think about, try to put yourself into the shoes of a partner. Maybe every half a year there's then the evaluation season, and that partner needs to decide what associate gets what ranking, what performance ranking, which determines your bonus and which also determines the speed of your promotions. Well, who is more likely to get that promotion if the people or if the different associates got very similar evaluations, for instance, from the project lead? Is it the person whom this partner vividly remembers from regular team interactions, team dinners like this? Or is it the person that in all these interactions just sat there, didn't contribute much, didn't do anything to just somehow be remembered really by the partner in a significant way? Well, I hope it's not surprising to anyone that very likely it's the former person who has the advantage, and which of course also creates exactly the pressure to socially interact like this, and then further depleting your batteries more and more throughout the course of such an already stressful day in consulting. Next example. Office activities. So the typical rhythm while working in consulting is that from Monday to Thursday you're really fully invested in your client work, needs to do lots of stuff. Often you're also located client side, not always, but often. But then on Friday often it's a bit of a more slower day, where at least traditionally you would have had the opportunity to move back to your home location, spend the day in the office, or actually just to start to spend the day in the home office. So now every Friday you had the opportunity to either go home, spend the day at home, potentially do a little bit of work, maybe some admin stuff, or you go to the office. Well, why might it be a good idea to go to the office? Well, of course, because you meet other colleagues, you have the opportunity to network. Often also different office societies, office events are taking place on the Friday. So this is the opportunity again to expose yourself to social situations, to network in your office, to get to know more people, potentially also network with the senior leaders who often also are there on the Fridays. And again, now you guess it, right? So for whom will it be likely easier to decide to not just spend the day at home and relax from already the very stressful time you had from Monday to Thursday, the introvert or the extrovert? I trust it's clear for whom this is the case, right? But again, on the other hand side, missing all the Friday's activities always surely is not helping you in your career. Again, we just discussed the topic of visibility. And last but not least, very much related to that is of course also relationship with clients, especially if you are based client side, sitting at the same location with your clients. Of course, during the day you will have all types of meetings, so more formal interactions with the clients. And surely it is your goal, it is your duty as a consultant, to some extent you're also evaluated whether you're able to do that or not, to build relationships, at least with the most important clients relative to now the project topic, the things that you're working on. And of course, in order to do that, the best people usually are people who are able, beyond just the very standard formal meetings that they have, to potentially just walk by their office, pick up a cup of coffee with them, maybe just invite them for lunch, spend time with them, have small talk with them, and build exactly these types of relationships. And all of this together leads to, I think, the fact that often for introverts, especially in the first years, it might be a bit more challenging to get used to this consulting environment, to thrive and to succeed, and to get the best evaluations, to be fast track promoted, and so on and so forth. So all this being said, while I acknowledge all these struggles, and I personally very much felt all these struggles as well, I do truly think that you can succeed in consulting, independent of whether you are an introvert or an extrovert. So let me now share a couple of tips, some strategies that I also picked up over time in order to succeed in these roles as an introvert indeed. And first, I want to talk about just learning some of these more typical extroverted behaviors. Because yes, as an introvert, you can develop yourself, you can learn to also adopt some of these behavior patterns. They might feel less natural to you, it might feel a bit more challenging and harder to you, but it is possible. And there are many things now that I can talk about. I just want to point to one thing, and this is the so-called trust equation. And I have created a video about this as well. I will link it somewhere above here where you can check it out. It is a simple framework of what you can do to build trust with colleagues, with clients. It discusses several actions that you can pursue, and all of them or most of them don't really even depend on spending lots of social time with them, chit-chatting a lot with them. So I think these are opportunities to really also succeed and build trust with these people, even with a more introverted type of mindset. Second, it's not the case that you always just need to do small talk with everyone, because typically introverts don't really enjoy doing that. Typically introverts like to have, if at all, more meaningful conversations. And here I think it's a helpful mindset to adopt, that you can actually derive often a conversation exactly in the direction that you would like, right? And if you don't want to do small talk, don't do small talk and rather move to the topics that are more meaningful to you. And in my humble experience, what I've seen often, also the other person actually enjoys this, to have this a bit more unusual conversation with you, beyond just always talking about how the last weekend was, or maybe what your plans for the next weekend are, right? And so what might you do? Well, there's one saying that sticks to my mind that I find quite inspiring. Now let me know in the comments whether you agree with this or not. But this saying says that simple minds talk about other people, mostly negative. Mediocre minds talk about experiences, mostly positive. And great minds talk about ideas. Okay? So instead of chit-chatting about other colleagues, instead of just talking about your last weekend, what the experience was like, just try to talk about ideas. So maybe something that you read that really inspired you, that sparked some ideas in your mind, and what the opinion of the other person is. I think this is always a great share, right? Talking about books that you're reading, other things like this. If you do want to talk about experiences, well, maybe don't make it about the last weekend. But for instance, a question that I always like, that I find always eliciting quite interesting responses, is something like, so what was your most memorable experience while working at this employer for the last year? What was your most memorable experience doing this or that? I think that's a great question also to ask maybe to a more senior colleague, to a partner. What was your most memorable experience here working in this consulting firm? Always fascinating what types of responses you get. Or again, instead of talking about the weekend, maybe ask something like, what are you looking forward to in the next weeks or months? What are you excited about, right? And this is great because then these people also start thinking about maybe positive emotions, positive feelings, thoughts that I might have going forward. A great, nice little question that I feel can also help you to go beyond the standard small talk. Next problem that often the introverts are facing is that often as an introvert, you just set a very high bar for yourself in order to talk, right? So you feel like in order for you to have the permission to talk, the thing that you want to say needs to be insanely valuable. And if this, what you want to say, is not very valuable, then you don't really have the right to talk. And then you're often just confused and maybe even annoyed by all these other people around you, than often more extroverted people who just say things where you felt like that was absolutely unneeded, not even worth your time, right? But many people do that. And in order to overcome this, of course, the obvious thing is to lower the bar a little bit, in the sense that not you saying useless stuff all the time, but that often you're very much underestimating the actual value of the things that you want to contribute. So maybe you feel like a thought that you have is obvious to everyone else, which is why you don't need to share it. But very often the truth is that this thought that you are having is not at all obvious to at least some people in the room, which is why many more things very likely are worth to be shared than you might think. And one little technique that I find quite helpful here is that what some people call the barrier of silence. And this is that often during the course of a meeting, the longer the meeting continues without you having said anything, the harder it will be for you to now suddenly, after the meeting is already 1 hour in, to only now start talking and start saying something for the very first time. So this barrier of silence is building up over time the longer the meeting gets, which is why a typical recommendation is that you should try in the very beginning, just at the start of the meeting, to say something, interact with someone, just drop a couple of comments, couple of remarks, even if maybe they are not the most valuable ones ever. But if you do this, then this barrier, this perceived hurdle for you to talk again, engage again, will feel much lower, much more easy to overcome than if you wouldn't have said anything for the very first significant part of the meeting. Next tip to succeed as an introvert is to focus more on your strengths. And of course, this now taps into some cliches, and of course, introverts are also different and not every introvert behaves in the same way. But at least some of the strengths that are typically associated with introverts is active listening. That maybe you don't have the need to talk all the time yourself, but actually you're a really good listener and you can detect, perceive things while just listening to someone that maybe someone else who is louder, or who he or she might be louder, might not be able to do this, right? So active listening, build on that. Obviously, this is a very, very crucial skill in professional services. Second, empathy. Here again, what many people seem to believe is that introverts are more empathetic because they have these antennas for the feelings, for the emotions of other people, which are easy maybe to be overheard if you just focus too much on just talking yourself. Use that. Empathy is so important, so crucial for professional services. It is a people's business, it is a relationship business. And last but not least, again, maybe a cliche, but many people seem to believe that introverts are also more analytically inclined, more analytically able. Again, of course, this is a very valuable skill in consulting as well. So yes, maybe you won't perform to the level as other people do in some of the other areas where the extroverts are stronger, but then just double down on your strengths, try to really excel in the parts where you are good at. And of course, you can then also get all the positive evaluations, all the fast track promotions and all these things you might fancy also not, right? Based on such virtues, such strengths that you can play. All right, and of course, last but not least, what's really important then to you is the weekends. You need to recharge your batteries at some point, very likely from Monday to Thursday, Monday to Friday. You won't really have the ability to do that. At some point, you should just accept that if this is you, if this is your personality, probably Saturday and Sunday, it will be very challenging for you to now also then just do lots of social things, spend lots of time with your friends, go out in the evenings. I mean, if this is great to you, if this feels like the right thing to do for you, of course, feel free to do that. But for introverts, I think for many of us, for me again included, the weekend was often a time where I just slept in, where I just enjoyed a slower day and rather not engaging too much with many other people. And at some point you might need to accept that this is just what you need to do in order to also properly prepare yourself for then the next rather busy and challenging week. So this is my thoughts on introverts. Please let me know in the comments, is this your experience as well? I would always be very interested also in some suggestions that you might have on how to deal with this. My name is Heinrich. Thanks to all the members of Firm Learning. Please leave a like if you took any value out of this. Subscribe if you like this type of content and want to see more. Looking forward to the next video next week, and bye bye.